Come one, come all, and gather around your old Uncle Nate because he's got a story he wants to tell you about a time when he was just a young man of 23 years old. So grab yourselves a juice box and some animal crackers and sit down because I've got a story I want to share. So, just to give you a little bit of a background on where I was at in my life at the time, this might sound like it's just useless information, but I think it might play into the story just a little bit. And it's going to provide you with some context on what might have happened. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there can help me piece this together. But just a couple years prior to this incident, in 2008, uh, I was 20 years old at the time. My dad passed away in 2008 on the exact same day that Lehman Brothers collapsed. So it was kind of like I lost the only source of stability that I had in my life up until that point. And then also, oh, by the way, the entire economy is just evaporating and melting down. So, hey, good luck, right? So, anyway, to make a long story short, I found myself working at Sears in the direct aftermath of the great financial crisis. So, I got hired there as I can't remember what the title was called, but I was one of those people that would come in early in the morning to change all the signs and change all the price tags and restock shelves, that sort of thing. And then I eventually worked my way up to being a sales associate for the electronics department. So, one thing I should kind of like preface here, and I want to put an asterisk next to this because I'm not sure if this is a real memory or if this is just my mind kind of like filling in the blanks after the fact. But I seem to recall being with my two managers. Like one was a lead, and I think the other was like a coordinator or something like that. And I remember being kind of like walked around and introduced to like different areas of the store. And I remember them kind of like joking around with each other and saying that this place is haunted, right? Um, and I kind of brushed it off and I buried it in the back of my mind because like I thought they were just shitting with me. So, yeah, but like I said, put an asterisk next to that because I'm not sure if that's a real memory or if that's just my mind kind of like making something up to like fill in the blanks after the fact. So anyway, fast forward a little bit, I'm in my early 20s. I'm stuck in a rut. I'm kind of like struggling to make it through community college. I'm working at Sears. My life consists of like working at Sears and just like eating $5 footlongs from Subway, driving my shitty car around. And actually, that brings me to another point. I just want to take a moment to appreciate Subway for being there for me in those trying times, offering those $5 footlongs. But yeah, anyway, that was like the great financial crisis soup kitchens, if you know what I mean. So anyway, Subway, eat fresh. So anyway, I was just working at Sears, and like I said, I worked my way up to being a sales associate in the electronics department of this store. And I think I gotta also mention that this wasn't a normal Sears store. This was a Sears Essentials. And so a Sears Essentials, basically when Kmart acquired Sears in the mid 2000s, they converted some of the existing Kmart stores into these new Sears Essential stores, which were like a hybrid of Kmart and Sears stores. It was just an absolute flop. There was really no reason to shop there. I can speak for the store I worked at in particular. It was just jam packed full of just like tweakers trying to come in and shoplift stuff because they think it's going to be an easy target. But it actually turns out that the loss prevention team was really on their game. So it was like shooting fish in a barrel for them, where they would catch shoplifters and bring them to justice really easily. But anyway, I digress. So I'm over there working in the electronics department one day in 2011. This would have been in October. I don't remember the exact day, but I know it was in October because of some other life events that happened to me shortly after this. So I was working the closing shift this night in particular, and the normal routine when you're working a closing shift at the time was that the loss prevention team, they would announce whenever all the customers were out of the store, they would say all clear over the intercom system, and then you would immediately start by counting all of your registers and putting all the excess money into these little money drop bags, and you'd finish the nightly routine by bringing up all the money in the bags up to the front of the store, and you know that would be that basically, and they would all let everybody out at the same time. So anyway, um, I was it was just this one night, man. It was just like a minute or two after the store had officially closed. There was still maybe a couple customers wandering around the store. So it's like you're sitting in your department waiting for them to give the all clear. So at this particular time, I had nothing to do. So what I was doing was I was leaning over this camera display. And actually, that reminds me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my camera angle a little bit this way. And when I go back and edit the video later, I'm going to put a diagram of the floor plan of the area so that you can understand what I'm talking about. So I'm leaning over on this camera display, and I'm sort of daydreaming, not full-blown daydreaming, like where I'm totally spacing out, but I'm kind of just like staring off and thinking about some stuff, just waiting for the all clear to be given so that I can start counting my registers. And off in my peripheral vision to the left, I see somebody kind of like walking down the main aisle towards my department. My department was located kind of towards the front of the store, but in the far corner of the front of the store, if that makes sense. And this figure was walking from the back of the store towards me, if that makes sense. So I don't really pay much attention to it because it's kind of like a normal routine at about that night. People walking from the back to the front and vice versa, because it's closing time. And so I'm not paying attention. I just keep on staring off into space, thinking about whatever it is that I'm thinking about. And I'm trying to put myself back into this moment. So I'm just staring off, and this figure comes closer and closer towards the center part of my vision. And I see it make a really hard right angle turn. It's actually a left turn, but it's a right angle turn. Just like a perfect turn. I can't really explain this, but the motion that it made was what really piqued my interest because like if a human wants to make a turn and like walk down a different aisle, like an adjacent aisle, they're going to make more of a rounded turn. It's not going to look super clean and perfect. It's just like it's more of a rounded turn when a person does that. But this thing didn't. It was just heading straight towards it was heading straight towards like the intersection of where like the main aisle makes another 90-degree angle. But instead, it just decided to turn down this toy aisle, and it was a perfect turn. The only way I can describe it is like a 2D video game, like Pac-Man. Like when Pac-Man makes a turn, it's just perfect. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't turn in a rounded way. It just immediately changes direction and just keeps going. That's exactly what this dark figure did. So about a second or two after this happened, I kind of like darted my eyes over because there was this baby doll toy on one of the shelves in the toy aisle. And this thing had been sitting there for a really long time because at the other end of the toy aisle was where we kept all of the electronics. Like it was the electronic stock room. So we kept all these like TVs in there, video game consoles, that sort of thing. We're all locked in the stock room back there. So, myself and everybody else who worked in the electronics department, we were very familiar with this baby doll toy because it was there for months. Every time we sold the TV, we'd have to walk by this toy and it would set off. And it only did like a handful of um, like a handful of things it would do when it would detect motion. One was like it would start laughing or giggling, and then the other one would be like it would start crying, you know. So anyway, when this figure went by this toy in the aisle, the toy went off. I can't remember if if it started crying or giggling, but it did one of those. And I immediately darted my eyes over to see who was over there. And from the angle that I was standing at, I could see the toy on the shelf. And it had definitely set off. I saw it get set off. It was still like wiggling its arms and legs and making sound and stuff like that. And what I did was then I took several steps into the main aisle so that I had like a perfect view of the entire toy aisle that this thing went down, like from end to end. And there was just nobody there, nothing there at all. So this thing had just vanished in a split second. Whenever I snapped out of my little daydreaming spell and wanted to go investigate what the hell this was, and nobody there, nobody there at all. So anyway, putting myself back in that situation, it for some reason it didn't scare me. I actually felt like that was one of the coolest things that I'd ever seen. Like, wow, there's so few people see this kind of stuff, and I felt I wouldn't say that I felt like privileged to have seen it, like I had seen some sort of like a miracle or something like that. That's not what I mean. But I felt privileged in a way that I'd seen something so unusual that most people never get to see in their lives. So I felt kind of giddy about it at the time. I remember once loss prevention gave the all clear, I was like counting my money really fast, and I wanted to get up there to the front of the store so that I could talk to my coworkers about what I had just seen. And so that's exactly what I did. I walked up to the front of the store, and there were these two guys who worked in the back receiving area of the store. These two old timers. They worked there since before it was Sears. They had started working at the store when it was Kmart, and then they continued working at the store when it was Sears. So they had worked there for a really long time. And so I was like, oh, dude, I think I just saw a ghost back there by the toy aisle. And I explained the situation to them, and they're just looking at me like, yeah, just join the club, basically. I don't remember their exact words, but they're basically like, yeah, join the club, dude. Like, we hear all kinds of stuff out in the back receiving area all the time, that it's kind of like this open secret that there's something weird in this store. And there's the one guy, the really old timer guy. He told me that they hear footsteps up in this wooden loft that was back in the receiving area. This giant dark wooden loft area where they keep excess signs and shelves and stuff like that. He says there's footsteps up there all the time, and when you go up there to look to see who's up there, there's nobody up there. So I was like, oh wow. And the guy next to him, he's like, yeah, a few months ago I saw something in the back receiving area, and he said that he saw a ghost wearing like old West clothes or old cowboy clothes or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And it's only been in hindsight, years later, after looking into stuff like this, that I just wonder if he saw like a shadow person wearing the cowboy hat, like the fedora thing. They call it like the Hat Man. But anyway, I guess I should describe exactly what I saw, huh? I think I glossed over that a little bit. I do want to start by saying that I don't have a crystal clear description of what I saw because it was in my peripheral vision. So I'm trying to be careful not to just fill in the blanks, you know. But what I can tell you is that the closest thing I can say about it is it just looked like a really dark, shadowy figure, um, like a not like a perfect human because like I don't remember seeing any legs moving. Um, and the motion it was making was really weird because it was like this really smooth motion, just like floating across the tile floor, um, almost like somebody standing being pushed on wheels or something, or like a skateboard or something like that. Just floating. No, heads not bouncing up and down like somebody who walks. Nothing like that. Just a floating type motion. I don't remember seeing any like legs moving or anything like that. But hands down, the weirdest part of the sighting was the motion, like when it made that turn, because, like I said, it's like Pac-Man. When Pac-Man turns, just keeps going. It just makes an immediate turn, and it just keeps going that same speed it was going. So, yeah, like a 2D video game or something like that. This like blurry shadow thing that vaguely looked human. And I already made the thumbnail for this video, and I actually generated the scene as best as I could using ChatGPT. And I want to say it is really accurate, at least according to my memory. So if you want to look at the thumbnail for this video again, this scene is actually really accurate, including the shadow figure that I saw. Quite accurate, at least according to my memory. This is what I remember it looking like. And then where the baby doll toy was that got set off, yeah, the location of that is actually pretty accurate too. And the overall look of everything in the store too is quite accurate in the thumbnail. So anyway, there there are some other stuff. There is some other stuff that happened shortly after this did. So what I'm gonna do is I think I might make a part two if there's enough interest in it. I might make a part two to this story. But just to finish off the night, I remember I talked to some of the girls who worked as cashiers up at the front of the store, and they're all freaked out because they're about my age, and they don't want to hear that the store they worked at has ghosts in it or something like that. So another thing that I do want to mention too is that at the time I had no idea what a shadow person was or like a shadow figure. Like I never thought that ghosts were supposed to look like this. I mean, call me ignorant or whatever. Like I've never been into ghosts or the paranormal before this, so it's kind of like I didn't know what I saw, so I just assumed that I saw a ghost. And so, yeah, what blew my mind though was that the two guys who worked in the receiving area just were not surprised at all, and they just to them it's just normal. Um, and like I said, this when I saw it, it didn't freak me out. It didn't stop me from going into to work. It's just I kind of filed it in the back of my mind, and I just thought it was one of those things that I could check off of a list, so to speak, where it's like, okay, I saw a ghost. Now I know that's real. And I never felt the need to look into that kind of stuff again because I just felt like I already knew that something weird exists. And so I don't have to pursue it any further. Whereas I think a lot of people, when they see something like this, they go balls deep into it and they just go all out and they want to know everything they can about it. Um, for me, it was less about that. Of course, I want to know what the hell it is that I saw, but I think just seeing it at all was enough for me. And would I want to see it ever again? Probably not, because I think now that would freak me out. But at the time, I was young and naive, and I don't think I'd want to see it again now because I'm comfortable now. I don't need to see that stuff. So, anyway, if you want a part two to this story, there is a little bit more I can share, some like weird stuff that happens after this, let me know if you want a part two. Um, but if I don't really get a huge, like not a huge response, but if I don't get much of a response to this, I'll just leave it at this. And then also, I talked about this story in greater detail on episode 2 of our main podcast, the episode number 2, the shadow people phenomenon. And I'll even spoon feed you the exact timestamp of it. I think I start telling this story at the 30-minute mark if you just want to skip ahead to it. So, anyway, let me think if there's anything else I want to say about this. Nope, I think that's about all for today.